which is always a good read. All right, recording going. Welcome everybody to our 1 hour having a look at the SIL practice standards, which we've been immersed in for the last 2 weeks in preparing the policies and the training tools and the implementation tools. So a very exciting time. So what I'll do is I'll share screen. We'll definitely, like, I have reserved time for Q&A, so we can have that down that end if you wish, making sure that we do get through the presentation. We can spend as much time as you like on questions afterwards, but also if something comes up and you have a real urge and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget this if I don't say it now, by all means say it, because really it is a high overview, because it is just the hour. So it is a high overview to give you a real orientation of what you can expect. But we do have a 1-day training, which we've scheduled for next week. If anyone wants to get to the nitty-gritty of the actual implementation and what that will look like. So without further ado, I will share my screen so that I may share the PowerPoint with you. Share my screen. Somebody give me a little bit of a heads up when you can see a PowerPoint in front of you. I think it should be sharing now. Yeah, thanks, Priya. It's always good to have somebody. Like I say, I've never gotten over the fact that I talked for 20 minutes once, painstakingly going through a PowerPoint, only to find that I hadn't shared the PowerPoint. So yeah, I've never gotten over that one. So here we go. Let me just pop it on present mode, and let's get into it. So how is everyone feeling about the new adventure, that you're about to embark on with the SIL standards? Show of hands, who feels really enthusiastic and happy about it? Not too many. And who feels a little bit nervous and like not really knowing what to expect? Yeah. Yeah. Understandable too. Yeah, it's big, And, from all of there's been a bunch of new standards that have come in since the originals. And I think the last one in 2021, that was the biggest kick in what felt like it felt like the biggest kick in the head in many ways, because they weren't written very well and they weren't implementable very well. And it took a really long time for people to get their head around them, and they weren't actually particularly logical. So they weren't really well thought through. But I feel like these ones are, and it's about time, really. Like, I shouldn't kind of have to pat anyone on the back for that, because I think, they all should be well thought through, because if you haven't actually logically planned and thought something through, getting someone to implement that, it just is nonsensical to them. And that's what mealtime management felt like. It's okay now, it's water off a duck's back now, mealtime management and emergency and disaster management, but they weren't well thought through. They could have been said in half the words that they've actually used. So yeah, those sort of things do make an impact on the sector. So we're going to have a look at these new SIL practice standards. Absolutely, it's a given. They should never, the first thing I said on the first day that I read this practice standards in 2000, when were they released? 2018, the end of 2018 or beginning of 2019. No, they weren't implemented till about July 2019. But the first day that I read them, I thought, where's supported independent living in here? And, and that was just day one of being a commission auditor. I just thought, this is absolutely nuts. Like, where does it talk about this most unsafe, what's the word? The highest risk service that had no standards, I thought that was bizarre, absolutely bizarre. And it honestly, it just showed a group of people that actually didn't think it through once again. So, but yeah, here we are, 7 years later. Woohoo! So what changes on July 1? Let's have a look. So today we'll have a look at why these standards exist. I'm sure most of you know that, but you know what? No, I can't assume that. Somebody could be new, and certainly anybody who's watching this as a recording. How the standards actually work. What's the plan? What did they think? What's the thinking that went behind them? And I'm very critical of that. I'm always looking for the logic. I'm looking for the smoothness. I'm looking for the integration because that's how policies are written. That is the way it works well. The 4 new standards, how to start setting up for readiness. And do I think they will work? We could all have a chat about that. I'm interested in everyone's views and yeah, our Q&A as we discussed. So why these standards exist. SILs carried the real risk, the harm between housemates, the thin oversight, the tenancies tied to the support provider. When the standards first came into practice, when I entered into the auditing area, what I saw, and then consulting soon after, but what I saw was a whole lot of providers capturing participants. And yeah, I'll take your SIL with you with it and your SIL package. And yeah, I'll rent a house, and people would get tied into these things. And there was a lot of no thinking. Like the commission, the NDIA, they should have thought those things through. It wasn't as though it had never been done because we had them statewide. We had SIL statewide for 50, 60 years, or, 40 years maybe. But we had it. But because it was taken away from the states, so was the knowledge and the history and how to do it. There was a few people from the state organisations that transferred into the federal department of the NDIA or the Social Services Department, but a lot of the knowledge was lost. And even when I did before I became an auditor, and I was working at the commission in the national quality team, I said they were talking about a problem in the team. And I said, that's really interesting, all the data, what you're all talking about, because we've got that data in the States. Like, where's all the state data? And I think the director of that unit turned to me and said, we don't know. We think it's just all gone. And I just thought, well, for anyone who's watched The Wizard of Oz, I just thought, oh, at that point I thought we're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. Like, what is going on here? Like, you threw away, or you're lost, you're lost, or you're purposely lost. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was that they purposely lost it. And I really do think that. I think that the people that I knew at the time that were developing the NDIS, they thought they were so much better than everybody. They thought that, oh, we're not going to be anything like that system. And we don't want any of those people who were working in the statewide systems coming into our system. And that was actually and I can tell you, I can evidence that that's what they said, because I actually was on a lot of interviewing panels back in the early years. And when Penrith rolled out, I was involved in the interviewing for a lot of the support work, the support coordinator and planner roles. And that's exactly what the most senior person said. And it's a shame, isn't it? I mean, that was the mindset. So possibly purposely threw everything out. And so, well, we all know how the story went, because we're here now and we've seen a lot of things being difficult for providers to navigate, because if you don't know what you don't know, then you're just going to do the best you can, which seemed like a really funny premise to run an Australia-wide system to me. But we're here after much harm to both staff and to participants. we're here. We've got a set of standards to try, and we're going to see if it can make a difference to both the participant care, the level of harm that has been reported over the lifetime of the NDIS, and the staff. And I'd be interested, can anyone tell me what I'm talking about when I say staff, the harm to staff? What do I mean when I say, the harm is not just to the participants, but very much associated with participants? What do I mean? There's something in the chat. I'm flying alone today, so I'm going to have to multitask. Hey, Fiona, good to see you. Oh, and when will you get the policy package? Listen, everybody, the policy package, the policy becomes active, what are they saying? The standards are active from the 1st of July. So you will get anyone who's purchased or pre-purchased pre-purchased the SIL practice standard policy package. We'll get it before then, but we can't give you the accurate date. We think it'll be the day before, because what we don't want is, we've got a commission that's calling it the draft standards, and it's still called the draft standards. So we're thinking, are they going to make a little change before the 1st? Because they still have six days, right, to make a change. So we're going to hold off until we either see they're no longer draft, they've changed that, or the day before, because we don't want to have to recall and say, hey, everyone we sent your policies to, and we're going to have to make some change. We don't want to do that. It's not good for anyone. It wouldn't be helpful for anyone. So we're going to wait till we see the draft turn into no longer draft as far as the commission goes, or we see, as I said, we'll do it the day before, and we'll worry about any changes that come after that like we would ordinarily. Just try to keep the chaos to a minimum for everybody is what we'd like to do. So did anyone answer? Yeah, work health safety. Someone has, can't say your name, Nokithula. That wasn't a bad go. I had a good go at that. Yeah, of course. Who can tell me in what order of harm? Let's just say there are 10 industries in Australia that are listed on the high harm for their employees. What number on that high list of harm do you think the NDIS workforce has? What number in that hierarchy do you think the NDIS employees have been allocated? From 1 to 10, what number? Where does NDIS employee sit on that harm from workers' compensation data? Have I got people to add in? You waiting? 2. Yes, very good. You've either read it or you've heard me say it before. But yeah, shocking, shock horror, absolutely shock horror that we should be number 2 in the most hazardous occupation in Australia for as far as workers' compensation statistics go. And number 1, like, it's not aged care, it's number 1, and it's not even working at heights. It's but number 1 is just like a tradies, bricklaying. So I think it's really awful that NDIS has the workforce has subsumed that number 2 place. So let's change that. And there wasn't a lot of leadership given from the NDIA in terms of you guys managing some of the most risk, the highest risk Yeah, probably top five. Absolutely. Two. So it looks like Zoom has really changed their UI, their user interface. Just trying to make sure I'm not leaving anyone in the waiting room. Um, but I should hear them if they come in, so it should be fun. Okay. So yeah, that's the deal. So SIL has carried a real risk, basically, and that's not just to participants. Um, the thing that's made it really difficult as well, we've got some very bad players in the market, but we've got some very greedy players in the market. Okay. So when people have gotten into trouble, it has been no prob bob for any of them to be able to shut down, leave a tax bill of 50 million, and then go and open up another one. And that's what the phoenixing is. Okay. So on the other side of this, there will be better governance from the end of the, I mean, that's on the NDIS Commission. There's going to be naughty people in every area of life, but the gates need to be tightened. So, yeah, we've had people do bad things and shut up and then start up again. So that's another reason why these exist. The old standards, really, they were generic. They didn't speak to the realities of someone in a home at all. Um, and these standards name what's good in SIL. So I can see there is some thinking. There is some thinking that has gone into these standards finally. They didn't do it as a knee-jerk reaction like they did mealtime management and emergency and disaster. If you look at those two standards, and if you have, you'll see it's like, my God, you just repeated yourself in several times on the same thing in the same thing in the same standard. So yeah, they weren't thought through well, and people don't like that. So yeah, we've got them to keep our participants safe. We've got these to keep our staff safe. I'm adding that. The commission's not saying that, but we've got to keep staff safe. Hey, we don't send you to work in the hope that you're going to be, one of the people who have a lifelong psychosocial disability for the rest of your life. That isn't what we want for people. Plus, it'll cost you a lot as an employer. Um, and we want to make it really a lot harder for people to do the wrong thing, get barred or banned, and then do it all over again, and give something to someone that can actually really make sense. And we hope that we've translated these. In fact, I think I have done a really good job alongside Ali. We've done it together, as we do. And we've done a really good job, I think, in translating these SIL standards. We've done the very best that we can. So how the standards work, there's an intent. And this is very much not dissimilar to the aged care standards. They started with an intent and etc. So I'm not going to say it's going to save the day, but it's nice that it's done, and I think it's helpful. So the intent sets the purpose of the standard. So sometimes people, I think busy doing your job, you're probably not policy people. I love words. I've worked in policy and strategy and communication as well in the social services department. And words matter because words give connotations. Words create a picture, and we've got to have the right words. So it sets an intent. These practice standards will set an expectation statement. This is what we want from you. Now, alone, is that going to make a difference? No. But if I translate that into the policy, into the tools, and into the training that I've developed, which goes with it, then yes, we could make a difference, right? The outcome statement. It's nice to know what you're expected to be able to deliver, right? That's nice to know. It's good to have that information. It did make a difference when they set the policies out in this way in aged care. It's made a difference. We had a much more dangerous aged care workforce 10 years ago than we do today. So there are the quality indicators in here. I thought they were well thought through. Some were, I think, impossible for people to translate, but I think we've translated them well for you guys. So in short, these standards will have rights on paper becoming observable practice in the home. So it's all very well for the commission to write a whole bunch of rights and expectations, but if that is only translated into a policy which has no beef in it, like examples, right? Instead of just, directions, right? In terms of, or this will happen and that will happen. We have a marketplace of around 75% of the market. Not, it could be getting better, but then we got more players coming into the market all the time too. But we've probably got about a marketplace of 75% of people who don't really know exactly what they're doing. They're doing the best that they can do. And then the 30% who they're pretty on it. They're across it. We've got some great providers. So we're dealing with this larger proportion of people who don't know what they're doing. And for that, I go the extra mile and always have in giving examples and trying to break it down for people to be able to follow. So this is the intention behind the standards. This is how you should experience them. You want to get a great document, policy, training to be able to make the most of them. Oops, I went too far. Tenancy and support are now going to be, this is new. It's the tenancy and support will be formally separated. So the participant can't lose their home over a support dispute. You can't, if the participant wants another SIL provider, they can have it. You have absolutely no legal bargaining power there. If the person wants to leave from your service, you are required to help them do that. Doesn't mean you got to pay for it. It means you got to find suitable accommodation for them to go to. It's not just pack your bags and off you pop. So that tenancy and support will be very much strengthened. I think I was talking to a client the other day, and in Victoria, I don't know who's in Victoria here, but it's tough. You've got the participant has the choice between whether they take the tenancy agreement or whether they take an SDA, Specialist Disability Accommodation Agreement. That agreement is on a whole new paradigm. There are basically no rights for the SIL provider. So you're going to have to be really careful. Yeah. So if you're in Victoria, I do not know whether all the other states are going to adopt something similar. I haven't heard they are, and I haven't heard they haven't. But I do know it's tough in Victoria because when there's an SDA agreement instead of a tenancy agreement, it's going to get tricky. And it already is, and this man's experiencing that. It gives all the rights to the participant and pretty much zero to the SIL provider. So we've mapped that out as best as we can without just saying, you can't do this and they can do that. We've really tried to map it out. Practice governance. I've always called it practice governance. I'm so glad to see they're doing this as well. Being able to name it and make it its own entity rather than governance. And hey, you've got some corporate stuff. You've got corporate and then you've got practice. And it didn't exist and I've always given it that name. So it's a logical name to give. So that's really strengthened in here because most of the things we've seen could have been fixed with governance. And the governance hasn't even been good at corporate level on the whole, let alone being good at practice level. Okay. So these things you're going to see strengthened. Well, actually, they're new, but we're still strengthening a concept. The supported decision-making, it's its own standalone practice standard. It's fundamental and foundational to the changes that we need to see. What's the opposite of supported decision-making? What could you see as a presentation if you have staff and managers and owners who don't understand the supported decision making and it being a human right? What do you think we'd see, and what's the outcome of that poor understanding of supported decision making, guys? You can name that for me. Anyone? Well, definitely a lack of the use of advocacy. Yes. If you're not even supporting or on board with supported decision making, you probably don't know that advocacy is needed. But what else would we see where there's, well, we see it all the time. We hear about it. We hear about it. I mean, I do. I don't know whether you guys hear about it, but what is the opposite of like what is happening when people don't understand and implement and follow through, not allowing participants to take risks? Absolutely. That is one big part of it. It's part of the pie. So, the pie graph. What else? Not allowing them to take risks. Yeah. The choice and controls, pretty tokenistic um, a lot of the time. What I see, there's a lot of good choice and control. I'm not going to say it's all bad because it's not. But have a guess at what you think I think is the worst presentation of reduced choice and control, where people actually think they're giving choice and control. But what do you think it is that I'm talking about? And this is what I see the most, and it bugs me so much. And I see it as a behaviour support practitioner as well. Well, because I just didn't have enough to do in effective policy and effective learning and smart compliance, I thought I should go out and do something else as well, just to keep really busy. But it's really giving me some food for thought. Definitely. Yeah, you're definitely going to see increased escalations when people are not actually supported to make their decisions. Definitely going to have compliance breaches. There's this one presentation. Put anything else up there if you want, guys, if you want to have another stab at which one I'm going for. But there's this one presentation which makes me sick. So we got increased. Yep. So here's what I see. Yeah, I'll give them a few choices. Let's give them a few choices. And then it's choice and control. No, you give them the entire gamut of the choices, because what I see is funneling. Does anyone know what funneling is as a intervention, which is used often? We often use it in mental health, especially where someone's being, scheduled because they're unwell. We use it in situations of great danger. But what do I mean by funneling? And this is what I see people doing, and I want people to wake up to what they're doing. Are you still sharing the screen? Yeah, I am, but I'm here. The screen, we're sort of just on this point here, but I wanted to be able to see you guys if you put another option up there. Has anyone got one more thing that I might be seeing, and maybe people don't know that they're doing it, but everyone's going to have to stop doing it? I want someone to guess it. Selective choices. Now, in some ways, if you've given enough, like, that's great. And if you've given them genuinely with enough broadness, that someone isn't being funneled to what you want. Because funneling is fine if I've got to get somebody to understand that I need to call the crisis team, right? And don't want to just spring it on them and they won't trust me anymore. Funneling is fine if that's the reason that you're doing it. There's no need to funnel someone when you're asking them, how would they like to have breakfast today? Do you want to, do you want bacon and eggs, or do you just want eggs? I'm only giving an example. What would you like for breakfast? If they're not good at thinking of what they like, give them lots of choices of what you have there, but funnel. Don't funnel them to the one that suits you. And I'm not saying any of you do this, but I do know lots of people do. And I know that support coordinators, some of the ones that I could, I don't believe should be allowed to be support coordinators, are giving choice. The amount of times I hear it's choice and control, choice and control. They want to come with me, choice and control. Um, really? Like, really, that's just a convenient choice and control. So choice and control has been weaponized. Just be aware, okay? Be aware. And it's taken a long time, but now the commission is really onto it. That's coercion. I see a lot of coercive support coordinators, and we've just got to really drop that. We've just got to drop that. We've got to leave it alone and just remember the person, not the bottom line dollar of, the money. That doesn't matter. Everything comes to you if you do the right thing. But if people are going to continue to do this kind of behavior, it's just going to see the end of the NDIS. So the one thing I'd want to say to everyone and say it far and wide is, if you want the NDIS to end, don't do the right thing. If you want it to keep going, everyone better start doing the right thing, because there's a little bit of devolving of the NDIS already. And if you don't want to see it go any further, I suggest you really do the right thing and ensure that your team are doing the right thing too. Because the more that this continues with the fraud and the coercion and the what's the name tactics, it's just they'll devolve it even further, and we'll end up back in the old system. So yeah, if everyone tries to do the right thing, it's not going to go that way. So let's really get on to that. When you see it, call them out. If you see a support coordinator clearly stealing from another support coordinator, but if there's a good reason for that, if there's harm, if there's all those sorts of things, great. If there's no good reason and the person isn't good at making their own decisions and hasn't been assisted by someone other than the support coordinator who wants to take their business, then you've got a problem. Houston, you've got a problem. So supported decision making really needs to be giving them real choice, not tokenistic, but also the supported part is about the information. Give people lots of information, or the information to the amount that they can handle, and watch your staff and make sure they are all doing the right thing too. And then we'll have a much longer NDIS institution, because if it continues on the way it is, it'll be devolved. So also, this is going to be very much, I think, the safeguarding is at the center, or probably encapsulates the rest of everything else. This is all about safeguarding, and all of these practice standards and etc. have been developed as a way to make that safeguarding happen more often, with also the threat of civil or criminal action if you don't. And it's been expanded to assist people to understand some of the areas that they've been missing. Yeah. And there's lots of areas that have been missing in this, because we have a lot of providers who don't know what they're doing. And I've never been of the view that it was the sort of thing you should learn while you get paid. I don't. I just never thought that was what it should be. I don't honestly think that anyone who's actually working, managing staff, it's okay to have a CEO maybe, that, or maybe the owners of an organization, but it's the key personnel. They're the ones that should know what they're doing. Those key personnel's got to have some idea. your managers, your team leaders, your compliance officers, it's not unusual for me to see somebody's compliance officer was a support worker for 6 months. And before that, they worked at Optus customer service. You know, that's not the trajectory that we would see before the NDIS. You know, we've really got to make sure that we upskill, that we govern, and that we, and there's been some actual legislative tightenings now. So, in a nutshell, yeah, I think, you know, safeguarding is at the center of this. I think it also wraps around all the practice standards that are circling that. And I'll show you, I do have a little, let me show you that right now, actually. I did just get something, I grabbed something out of my policy. So I could show you. Oh my God, why do they keep changing things? How do I push this? Right, there you go. I do have this Word document. Shit. Not that one. Oh shit, sorry, everybody. Get rid of it. God. Okay, so what we've got is, I just need to find, here it is. Do excuse me for that. I'm so sorry. All right. I wanted to bring this one. Now, is everyone seeing this? Was that a yay team or?
Yes, Gina, you can see
Good.
it.
Okay. Right. So this is what I wanted to, how I want you to vision the new practice standards. So safeguarding is at the centre. We've got a supported decision making, we've got practice governance, and we've got agreements. So it's strengthening of agreements, the housing and the support. It's the practice governance, which means more focus and more requirements and more regulation for providers to improve their governance and their oversight, and more scrutiny on supported decision making to improve the person's human rights. It's all safeguarding. It's coming at it from 3 different angles, okay? And it's all very much centered on the SIL issues that, you know, the market's experienced. So coming back to our PowerPoint, so that's a bit of a thematic description. So you've got 4 new standards. You've got supported decision making, which was implied in assessment, but it wasn't strong enough, it wasn't upheld enough, it wasn't given center stage. Yeah. And also, I don't think that SIL was given enough instruction, and I don't think that's on the providers. I think that was a dud from the NDIS, in all honesty. And, you know, I'll always call out the provider market when I need to, but I think if you didn't give someone the instructions, then shame on you. And that's the NDIS and the NDIS Commission. So the 4 new standards: supported decision making, the safeguarding itself, practice governance, and tenancy and housing agreements. So these are where you'll be focusing on improving and implementing. So implementing and improving and implementing. Okay. So what does it mean for you? The registration group 0138 applies from 1 July. Every SIL provider will be audited against these standards. Ah, God, I'm just a bad driver. Let me go back. Right. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm such a doofus sometimes. I don't know why. So I just want the next standard to come down. Come on. What's going on? Feel free to help me, anyone, because I just don't know why it's doing this. I run these things all the time. Why on earth am I not getting the next? Damn, I'm just gonna stay here. So we've got Yeah, your registration group is going to be 0138 and it applies from July. You've got every SIL provider will be audited against these standards. It's just, I'm scared to touch the damn thing. Hang on. Perhaps that's all there is. All right. So the other thing that needed to be here is, guys, that is anyone going to tell me what date you're going to need to make sure you have your SIL application or variation to scope in by? So we know that they come out on the 1st of July and all applications have to be in the portal. That doesn't mean that have to be audited by, it means in the portal, all applications for SIL registration group have to be in the portal by what date? Who knows? The portal by 1 October. Okay, so that's about what that's saying to you guys is that you've got to get your application done. Okay, which will mean this self-assessment. It will mean variation, your application in the system, submit the application. The audits are going to take a long time. All right, so it's going to be a while. But what I can see is they're putting their foot down and going, you know what, we're not going to let this go for 5 years. We want everyone's application in. And they've actually said, if your application's not in the portal by October 1, forget it. You lose the opportunity. Okay. That's for existing registered and unregistered providers. Okay. So make sure you really do get it in. Okay. That's the focus. So our next is, what are you guys going to do to start setting up for readiness? Well, some might just go, give me the policies and we'll pop them in there. And yeah, if you've got to have training, we'll do that. And others might go, you know what, maybe we should sit down and have a look at this and see how far away at the moment from having these things happening are we? Now, we have SIL providers who pretty much do this stuff. Yep. With maybe a few things, you know, not being done. But we have SIL providers who are already functioning as though they existed. We have a lot that aren't. Okay. So if it were me, I would be just having a little gap analysis to see how far away from that I am. And when I say that, I would say, right, here's just like any other internal audit, we'd say, right, here's the SIL standards. I'm just going to do a little gap analysis. If you're skilled enough, if you have a quality manager that knows how to, is skilled enough with the standards, then you do your own gap analysis. If you don't, you get somebody to do it for you. Or I think we're adding that to our audit readiness checklist, which is quite comprehensive. Our audit readiness checklist is like a mini audit that people do. And we're going to add these standards there as well. So you can do it yourself. You can have a quality manager do it that's working within your organization, or if your team leader's really, you know, clever, or if you're really good at it anyway, just get it done. So you want to know how far away from ready you are, because how far away from ready you are is going to say, one, how much work is it to get there? Two, going to give me an idea of when I will book my audit, because I would go booking your audit for 2 weeks later unless you're prepared, unless you have everything Mickey Mouse and you've got you go, yeah, I nailed it, we're already doing it, or you're looking forward to getting so many non-conformities that you'll get put into a 90-day review cycle and a compliance order. So this is why you want to know, how far from the mark am I? How long will it take to do? What order should I do these in? And then when will I be ready for audit? Okay. So don't stress about the audit. The main thing to stress about, if you're going to stress about something, is about getting your application in that portal. Okay, that's the main thing. So after you've done that, after you've done the application, do that first. You want to do your gap analysis. You want to fix all the things that need to be fixed, and then you start getting your evidences ready. Okay, just like you would for any other audit, making sure that you are able to show them. It's okay that you might have a couple of non-conformities, but it's still going, like minors and stuff like that, but it's still going to be the same as any other audit. If you have too many, if you have more than, for example, if you have more than two in the one indicator section, module, sorry, the module, you are going to get a compliance order. And so you don't want that. So this is how I would be getting ready for it. And remember, you can do your application first and then move on to the gap analysis. Where you're going to lose marks, okay? So probably, except for those few providers that I said are already so close to the mark, the separate tenancy and service agreements that participants actually understand. So I'm awfully pleased to see that there's an onus on understand. We want to see evidence that what have you done to help them understand? Because the gap has been, they have no idea what they're getting themselves in for sometimes. And it's hit and miss whether people are really explaining to them. Like, for example, in the health and community service standards, which we used in drug and alcohol or, sometimes housing and stuff like that, we would, for example, onboard somebody, talk them through the rules and the this or the that and, everything they need to know if they're coming into the service, but then come back to them 24 hours later and go through again and see what they actually understood and ask them open-ended questions. What do you understand about that? Obviously, there's going to be different understandings from people with different diagnoses and different skills, but we can get a sense of whether somebody's actually understood what they're getting into, what it all means. And yeah, that comes back to that sort of safeguarding and rights-based stuff. You'll lose marks if you haven't got your worker competencies assessed. So you'd actually also, in the preparation stage, so where I said the gap analysis or the internal audit, I would definitely have that would be part of that process would always be assessing your staff's competency. This is not just about are they being trained. This is a competency. So what we've done is we've built the training in the LMS for the new standards. And I also because all the new practice standards are built on, they're entangled, quantum entanglement, they're entangled with evidence-based practice. I actually did a module, short one, but a module on evidence-based practice so that people understand it, because we don't want to see that someone had a headache and so the support worker thought it was a great idea, or the owner or the whatever had a great idea, we're going to have some Reiki. Let's go have some Reiki. That's a great idea. We'll go Reiki and we'll, a bit of the hands-on, that's not evidence-based practice as far as this scheme is concerned. And that was what might not have been the best example ever, but evidence-based practice, supported decision-making is evidence-based practice. And trauma-informed care is evidence-based practice. These things that are evidence-based practice are the things that the training will explain. Because I think if support workers can understand and team leaders can understand, and anyone providing services like support coordinators that aren't skilled or qualified can understand, there's a really good reason why we want you to use evidence-based practice. Can anyone tell me that? That's what that short 10-minute module goes into. There's a reason. When people know the reason, sometimes they don't have to just remember what it was they were told to do, because that reason made so much sense. It gave it the architecture for it all just to sink in. There's a reason why every funded service under government pretty much wants you to do evidence-based practice. Is there anyone going to tell me why? No takers? Because they're defensible, because they're proven. There's research on them. Um, if something goes wrong, we don't want that to happen, but it's defensible. You weren't doing witchcraft, you were doing tarot, you weren't doing water dousing, you weren't, you know, doing a laying on of the hands and stuff. But you weren't doing any of that. You were doing evidence-based practice, evidence-based, interventions, etc. So that's why we just want everybody to understand that, I guess, so that the decision making becomes so much easier when it's like, we go for a non-prescribed colon clearance, and I say non-prescribed, that a gastroenterologist didn't prescribe it, didn't say that it has to happen, just because it makes somebody feel good and you think, yeah, I'll take them there and they can have that. I know they'll feel $1 million. It's not evidence-based in terms of for this person's condition, whereabouts was that an evidence-based intervention that was necessary for autism, so it's just about thinking things through, because your insurance as a provider matters, the safety of the participant matters. So yeah, sort of develop those modules, which are in our LMS, or will be by the very soon. They're all written, but then there's a competency requirement. So that's the training modules. But these standards go further to say, we're not just wanting your LMS training, we want a competency assessment. So I have developed competency assessments. There are the ones that will be in our LMS, and for the people who don't use our LMS or any LMS at all, we're going to have a paper-based one. So that's scenario with competency assessment for all those practice standards. So you can see it's gone up a notch, right? It has. It really has gone up a notch. So here we are. Yeah, we want there. I think we're nearly there. Now, what do you reckon? I'm really interested to hear. I won't be able to hear the people that are going to watch this by recording, unfortunately, but unless you want to, of course, comment on the YouTube channel, because I'll post it to YouTube at some point with a private link. But what do you think, guys? Do you think this is going to make a difference? Tell me your thoughts. Nobody? Impact on the. Yeah, what do you think? Have I got any answers in there? Nobody. So nobody knows if it's going to make a difference. What do you think of the new practice standards? I think so. Maybe we will control the risk that comes with SIL. Yeah, yeah. Look, I think they'll make a difference. I don't think anything makes a difference unless it's implemented. So I think the tools and the strength and the support that you get and that you give are important. But yeah, I do think that they'll make a difference. So look, that's the overarching what you can expect. So I think that yes, where providers treat them as a practice, not as a paperwork, and that goes for anything. The architecture here is strong, right? To now observable and enforceable. The risk is a tick box compliance and uneven. Commission capacity to audit well. That is what is necessary there. Now, most new practice standards take a year to settle in because you're going to get such a lot of variance in the way auditors see it and consultants see it. And so it takes about a year, 9 months to a year for those things to sort of settle out. We don't know, but every consultant, I would assume, I mean, we definitely do. What if there is a valid variance that where it's not meeting the standard, we will always update that. But we always check to see this is where the problem is, that some of the auditors have such varying views. If they can show me that it actually is a non-conformity, of course, and sometimes just good suggestions. Sometimes there's just, we always take on suggestions. So yeah, look, it's just an unclear first year usually, but we'll get through like we have with all of them. I'm always of the belief that the real change is going to come from governance. Without governance, you are never going to have a shift. Not in anything, not in any organisation, not in any service. It's governance. Governance fixes everything in organisations that aren't working well, or where there's harm, or where there's no, not good outcomes. If there's no governance, there's no success. So I want to just open up and see if you guys have any questions. Feel free to turn on your chat. You don't have to. You can speak now. Like, I mean, you could have before too. But if you've got something and it's just easier to ask it, please do.
I think there'll be questions when the policies come out.
Oh, say that again.
I think there'll be more questions when the policies come out.
Yeah. That's true. And that's why we are like offering up I think it's like a 6 hour or 4 hour, I think it's 6 hours next week, for people who buy our policies. We give the ticket cost is $200 for that, but you can bring as many people as you want. Like it's not like $200 a ticket, but yeah, that's why we're unpacking that. It is after when we know that there's no more changes, they're not going to spring anything on us, because the name is still draft, so we are just playing it safe. So we will be going through, the actual implementation, etc. And how to look at the policies, how to use them the most effective, and how the training ties in with it, etc. I think we know that people will be well equipped through our training. So, but even the policies, they're not bad. They're pretty good, and it's the scenarios. I think, I've given a lot of real examples, and I think that's really important for people, to have something to actually be formulating that theory or that direction that someone's trying to give them in the policy. So yeah. Yeah, I'll give you the transcript. I'll not just give you the random, I mean, sorry, the verbatim. I'll take the transcript from this and send it out to you so you've got a bit of a record. It'll be a bit more organized as a summary.
Hey, Gina.
Hi,
So if somebody is already registered provider, they don't need to do anything right now. Yeah, we don't need to submit any new policies before 1st of July.
If you're a SIL provider,
Yep.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you're either registered or unregistered, your application needs to be in the portal before the 1st of October.
If
If
you're a SIL
if
provider who is registered,
yeah,
they still need to provide an application before 1st of October, is it?
yeah, you need to put your application in. Doesn't
Oh,
mean you have to have your audit straight away, or you're not having it by the 1st of October. They're saying you have to have your applications in that portal by 1st of October, or you don't get to put it in at all.
because the email that came from the NDIS regarding the notice of intention to vary registration,
Mm-hmm.
it said in the PDF over there, it said if you are a registered provider, you don't need to act.
No, that's not what we got. We got that everybody has to have their application in. But I'll go back and
Even the
check.
Okay, even
Mm,
there's a newsletter which came out even today, like just an hour ago. You know how they send the email.
mm.
Uh, Even in that one, it says if you are a registered provider, you don't need to do anything.
Okay, all right. Well, perhaps it's just changed recently. So let me have a look at that and I'll send it out with you. Okay, with this.
See,
Okay.
Gina, I'll just comment on that if you like, because we're about to
Yeah.
go through a midterm audit. So we're
Yep.
sort of making sure that we've got all our boxes ticked as well.
Mm.
Basically, what it is that the NDIS is supposed to send out a letter to each registered provider and explain that their the 0138
I
component
got
will
that.
be automatically rolled over.
Yeah.
If you haven't received that kind of communication, then you would need to send an email to the registrations at NDIS and ensure that they're aware that you haven't received it and that
Mm.
you're about to go through an audit and that you need that added. Or I guess is the other option of including it in a variation if you're going through your midterm audit
Yeah.
before the October period. That's
Yeah.
my understanding.
My letter said, and I don't do SIL, but I did have that. No, anyone who the letter was triggered by whether you had shared environment registration group, and that's not what mine said. So I'll go back to look at that and then make a few phone calls and just be really sure about that. But it's most definitely the unregistered providers. But let me check about what the deal is with the registered ones, because that's not what mine said. That's a bit concerning. So I'm just going to double check it and send it out with the transcript. Okay. Just give
I've
me an
just sent you
hour or
the
so.
snippet in the chat,
Excellent.
which we just
Came
got
to
it.
you. And it came to you as a registered SIL provider. That's your category, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is in the chat. Let me see. I just want to, yeah, I'll go back and just compare a few of the notices we've got. New requirements, supported independent living. I'll read it out. New requirements for supported independent living and NDIS digital platform providers from 1 July 2026. All providers delivering supported independent living or digital platform services must start the process to register with NDIS Commission. That's from the 1st of July. Must start the process, right? All SIL providers must follow new SIL practice standards from 1 July. Unregistered providers delivering SIL or NDIS digital platform services before 1 July must apply for registration by October. Yeah, that's what I said. You must have it in the portal. That's what that says.
But that's for the unregistered providers.
Yeah, unregistered providers. Yes, yes. Well, it's definitely unregistered that I set it for, but I didn't get new providers to sell from that's right. If you're already registered, you do not need to act. Okay, that part wasn't in my letter. Okay, all right. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. If you are already registered, you do not need to act. The NDIS Commission will update your registration for you. And then so you're just going to need to do it at your next audit,
Yeah, that
correct?
that
So
sounds about right.
no variation to scope is needed.
Yeah.
That's essentially that. Okay, let me just make sure that's followed up, and I'll send that out to all the other people who registered as well.
And
Okay.
Gina, how can we buy the
Mm.
pack that you have created for the SIL?
Okay, so I'll put it in the email for you, but it is also on a pop-up that's on our site. But I just want to make sure I've double checked on all of this. That looks very clear, but it's definitely not said in my letter. Maybe they missed out that part. Maybe the second part of my letter didn't come through. Because I'm a provider as well. So give me an hour. I think me and Ali will just go through our, channels and just make sure we get that completely right. Okay. But thank you. I really appreciate you bringing it in to the chat. Yeah, maybe it just dropped off my letter. But anyway, so what else, guys? Is there any other thoughts, concerns it raises for you? Do you see any shortfalls that you thought, oh, how am I going to manage that one? I think it's important to make sure that you've got a training provider, or that you've got your own training if you're implementing that. So either lean on the people that already have it, or make sure you're able to purchase some that you can keep for yourself. That's part of. I mean, if you don't use a training provider, LMS, you're going to have a big thing in front of you to make sure if you're doing your own, you're going to have to develop that resource. The competency is important. Figuring out how you'll fit that in. A little bit of work to make sure those competencies and that training are completed. I mean, do you know what? I think that's actually the most amount of work up front, to be honest. But you can do it over time, which is good. Anything else, guys? Anything else that you think needs to be looked at? Nothing? Alrighty. So what I will do is send out the transcript, but not until I've just gone through and got some definitive advice to put in it. Okay. With some timelines if possible. Alrighty. All right. Thanks, everybody. You'll hear from me later this afternoon. Just give me an hour.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Okay. Bye bye now.